On Eid morning, Prime Minister Albanese and Minister Burke attended Lakemba Mosque during Eid prayers. Muslims understandably expressed their frustration and anger.
It's okay. When they chant gas the Jews, they're angry. When they firebomb Jewish restaurants and shops, they're angry, they're upset.
Given that many of you white people in here claim English as your first language, that you would actually know what this means, or maybe. I've just returned from Pakistan after seeing my Ammi. Australia's criminal inaction on climate is deeply felt there. We must start a process of making climate reparations to the global south country.
Climate reparations? Who are these fuckers loyal to? She wants the ordinary Australian families to pay her Ammi, to pay her family members in Pakistan as a climate reparation. All right, people. When I say that Anthony Albanese is the worst Prime Minister of Australia, it's not hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating it, or I'm not just trying to express my anger and disappointment at Anthony Albanese. It is my objective analysis, and it's not just mine. I was listening to Peter Costello, in my opinion, the best treasurer in modern times. When we were living through his tenure, we don't realize that we are actually living through a golden time until that time is gone. Now they're preparing Australians for the worst economic downturn in Australia's history, in my lifetime at least. And guess who's at the helm? These lefties. Apparently, our spending is through the roof. Our national debt is through the roof. When Peter Costello's tenure ended in 2007, Australia was in surplus. We had zero debt. Fast forward 18 years later, we are nearly $1 trillion in debt. To my limited understanding, they're saying that this is the worst time for Australian economics, for Australia, period. And to make matters worse, we have the worst Prime Minister in Australian history running this country. I mean, we could have afforded a bad Prime Minister like Anthony Albanese sometime in 2010 and 11 maybe, but not now. It's getting worse. And not just economically, socially as well. He's doubling down. He's saying that Australia has added 10% to its population through immigration in the last 5 years alone. 10%. Let that sink in for a moment, okay? 10%. Who are these people? What kind of views they hold? What kind of cultural grievances they're bringing? You know, you've got Hindus versus Sikhs, the Khalistani movement. You've got Hindus versus Muslims. You've got Muslims versus Jews. All of these people are coming in. Ordinary Australians have got nothing to do with those things. And Anthony Albanese gaslights you and he tells you, we are welcoming all these foreign grievances. We are welcoming all these foreign feuds at your expense. And as South Australia's Premier said, who's going to wipe your bum if we don't bring in these people?
My message to One Nation voters is, who's going to feed you and bathe you and wipe your bum when you're 90, right?
Anyway, the worst and most tragic and probably the funny part of this whole story is that no matter how much Anthony Albanese bends over backwards, simps for a particular community, they still don't like him. You saw what happened to him at Lakemba Mosque, yeah? Now, a couple of days later, Mehreen Faruqi, let me tell you, she is an immigrant from Pakistan, just like me, but very different from me. She's a senator. What an absolute privilege for an immigrant. She moved to Australia when she was 30 years old. Okay, I was 19. She was 30 years old. And she's been in the Senate for, I don't know, over 10 years, somewhere around that. What an absolute privilege. You've been given an opportunity to represent your constituency or people at the highest house of the country, the Senate. And she's got nothing to give other than just complain about this country. She's previously referred to Australians as you white people.
Given that many of you white people in here claim English as your first language, that you would actually know what this means, or maybe.
She's a Green senator. I think she's a deputy leader, maybe the leader of the Greens. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Irrelevant. Again, it's the Green and Communist Alliance. They're doing the same thing over and over, everywhere. So I also was confused. I don't know. I thought maybe she's a Marxist woman because she's not a typical radical Pakistani, but she is a Pakistani nonetheless. From Islamabad, by Pakistani standards, they're pretty liberal. But again, those grievances against the Jewish people, against the colonizers, those grievances don't go away that easily. Have a listen to what she has to say about Anthony Albanese.
On Eid morning, Prime Minister Albanese and Minister Burke attended Lakemba Mosque during Eid prayers. Muslims understandably expressed their frustration and anger.
It's okay. When they chant gas the Jews, they're angry. When they firebomb Jewish restaurants and shops, they're angry, they're upset. They just burned 4 Jewish ambulances in London. Well, they're angry. They're like, oh, where was your outrage when Israel was committing genocide against Gazans? At least there was no Jew inside these ambulances. That's what they're saying. Always make excuses for the belligerents. Never look themselves in the mirror. But I told you there's a funny side to it. She's directing that at Anthony Albanese, who bends over backwards for these people, gave them millions of taxpayers' dollars to upgrade their mosques, to have extra security. Why don't I get extra security? I deserve to have a couple of security guards watching over me 24/7 because, there is a certain peaceful community that likes to threaten people like me. But no, these people need more security at taxpayers' expense. Okay, sure, serves you well, Anthony Albanese. He recognized the state of Gaza. He received a personal thank you from Hamas. Hamas said, well done, thank you very much. You're on the right side of history. If their side of history is the right side, then I don't want to be on the right side of history.
Muslims understandably expressed their frustration and anger at the Labour government's complicity and inaction on Israel's genocide in Gaza.
See? Tie everything to Israel genocide. Genocide in Gaza. Therefore, we can act out like that here. We can act out. If this Prime Minister had a spine, then he would stand up and say, hey, I have done more than enough for your community, and you're still doing this? You know what? Fuck you all. But he wouldn't do that, because you need a spine for that, guys. You need a spine. He made his bed, and now he's lying in it. I'm actually enjoying it.
Instead of acknowledging these sentiments, the Prime Minister left the mosque in a rush.
The Prime Minister literally ran for his life. Did you see the foam that was coming out of the mouths of those people? Oh my goodness, there's no pleasing of these people. I'm telling you, there is no pleasing of these people. They have a civilizational take, okay? They hate the Jews, they hate Israel, and they also hate the West. Once they're done with the Jews, they're coming for you. Ordinary Westerners. That's a civilizational take. And that's why the West needs to say, okay, we gave you an equal seat at the table. Turns out it was a mistake. You have your own way of looking at the world. You want Israel to go away. You want the Jews to become stateless again. And you have your own Islamic dreams of conquest. Fair enough. That's perfectly fine. You can hold those views like you did for the past 1,400 years, but go back to your own countries and meet us in the battlefield, because we have a different take towards civilization. We don't believe in your ways of running a society. But again, as I said, you need leaders with spines.
Ignored community criticism and misled the media about why people were confronting him. On the religious festival of Eid, the Prime Minister indulged in far-right talking points to delegitimize people angry about his presence in the mosque and Labour's complicity in the genocide, linking them with extremism. Minister, why did the Prime Minister lie and mislead the media?
Actually, he did lie. He talked it down. He said, it wasn't that big a deal. Nothing bad happened. There were 30,000 people. Only a few people heckled me, and they're unhappy because we proscribed Hizb ut-Tahrir. That's what he said. He said they're angry because I banned an Islamist extremist organization called Hizb ut-Tahrir. That's why they're mad.
I've seen some of those reports and they're just simply not accurate. There were 30,000 people plus at Lakemba this morning, overwhelmingly. The reception was incredibly positive.
And let me tell you a little bit more about this woman, Marine Faruqi. If you think she's something, well, you haven't met her son. He is quite something too. This is an old tweet. Such a lovely family, Drew Pavlov is saying. She said, just F off. And look at this. This is her son. The white people are getting effed. Yes, it's happening. They hate the West. They just hate it. There is a whole generation of these idiots who grew up hating the West because of its colonial past. And by the way, they put Australia in the same category as well. And when you say, well, which country Australia colonized, then they would say, oh, the natives of Australia, the Aboriginal community, they colonized them. As if these people care about the Aboriginal community. They don't care about anyone other than their own worldview, other than Islam. Even this so-called moderate Muslim. That's why it is so difficult for us to work out who's the good Muslim and who's the bad Muslim. That's why I keep telling you, can you please define what is a good Muslim and what is a bad Muslim? We'll stick to it. Isn't that funny? They never define that. But every time something bad happens, they tell us, oh, there's some good Muslim. Not all Muslims are like, well, who are they? Because right now it looks like an extremist Muslim pulls the trigger and the good Muslim says, well, if you don't change your ways, if you don't submit, if you don't let us do these things, then he's going to pull the trigger. Them two look like a hand in glove. Look at this. Mediocre white people, they should be in the bin. But instead, they own everything and are every fucking where. Again, communist angles. By the way, she's pretty rich. I think she's got 4 or 5 investment properties. She has done fairly well for herself. Fairly well. And as I said, she's been a senator for like 10 plus years. How ungrateful. Absolutely ungrateful. Unless Muslims start coming out and start distancing themselves from these people, I'm telling you, there is a storm coming. And ain't no Anthony Albanese going to save you. I have said this before. Keir Starmer and all these other center-left politicians, they will throw Muslims under the bus the moment it becomes untenable for them to defend them. Untenable. That's the criterion. You think these politicians are going to stand by Muslims who haven't actually been behaving that well? You think they're going to stand by them? No.
I've just returned from Pakistan after seeing my Ammi. Australia's criminal inaction on climate is deeply felt there. We must start a process of making climate reparations to the global south country.
Climate reparations? Who are these fuckers loyal to? She wants the ordinary Australian families to pay her Ammi, to pay her family members in Pakistan as a climate reparation. Oh my goodness. Who are they loyal to? She's not an Australian senator. She's a Pakistani senator. Global South. That reminds me of David Lammy. David Lammy was saying Britain should pay reparations to Jamaica.
As Caribbean people, we are not going to forget our history. We don't just want to hear an apology. We want reparation.
Let me tell you something. Even if Australia's done something wrong by some other country 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, bad luck. Depending on the severity of the harm, we'll look into it. But my gut reaction is not to blame Australia straight away. It just wouldn't be. Because that's not how countries work. Yeah, if you're a lefty, woke, lunatic activist and you're drowning in the sea of your self-righteousness and you want to virtue signal the world that, hey, look, we do this to our own country. We hold our own country to account. But actually, they end up holding their country to a totally different standard than what they're holding our enemies to. I always say, does the Islamic regime give 2 Fs about international law? Did they care about international law when they were arming Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis? No, they weren't. So why are we being gaslit into following international law when it simply doesn't even work? What do you want us to do? Go to the Security Council and say, hey, can we bomb the Islamic regime? China and Russia will say, no, don't. There you go. That's your international law. So anyway, she's a terrible person, terrible, terrible human being, a terrible politician. And I don't know. I really hope that she doesn't win again. I don't know who is voting for her or people like her. This is absolute lunacy.